It's a great privilege for me to introduce to you my confrere, Father Cy Peterka. Allow me to let you know a little something about him. The Reverend Cy Peterka, CM, has been a Vincentian priest for over 37 years. He is a proud 1972 graduate of the esteemed Niagara University. Presently, Father Cy has been in Philadelphia for almost 2 years as pastor of St. Vincent de Paul Parish, which is known for its worship, its outreach, and its activism. Here he has become involved in a faith-based interfaith group called Power, which is presently pushing for immigration reform, adequate funding for city schools, and immigration reform. He is also part of a dynamic group which has connected with dedicated lifers at Gatesford Prison, a maximum security prison, to help those who will be released from Gatesford to successfully make that transition back into mainstream society. Father Cy is passionate about Africa. In 2002, he was afforded an amazing opportunity to be on sabbatical in Africa, where he experienced and studied about the spirituality of the people of Africa. Ethiopia is one of the 4 countries he visited during his sabbatical. And while there, he established a special relationship with the Vincentian province of Ethiopia. Subsequently, the Ethiopian Vincentians asked him to be a consultant to their province. This entailed traveling to Ethiopia twice a year to help with their planning, development, and formation, and innovating in that province for the last 3 years. As a result, he was appointed by the Superior General of the Congregation of the Mission, also known as the Vincentians, as an advisor on Vincentian formation in all of the Vincentian provinces in Africa, about 10 countries. As an advisor, he is involved in improving their seminary systems and getting the various countries to work together in Vincentian formation. After his first visit to Africa, Father Cy was so touched by the poverty and the needs of the people and the great works of the Vincentians that he started an appeal for hope for Africa to help the Vincentians serve those people. As a strong advocate, he writes to everyone asking for help that the Vincentians can do in Africa to serve these wonderful people. Needless to say, my friends, Father Cy loves the Lord, loves the poor, and loves the world, especially the people of Africa. And so I present to you my good friend and confrere, Father Cy Peterka.
First, I just want to say how honored I am to be here. In planning for this, I ran off 50 copies of a little brochure on Nigeria. And then this morning when I went to one of the talks, I said, oh, maybe I should make that 100. So I ran off another 50. Then when I walked in tonight, I was blown away. I said, wow, I can't believe how many students are here. And you might be here because you're getting extra credit. But I want to say that God doesn't play games. And you might think that that's the reason you're here. But I kind of think that God wants you here for a deeper reason. As was said earlier, I'm going to talk about the Vincentians in Africa. But you are Vincentian. Turn to the person next to you and say, you're a Vincentian. See, one thing, I love to preach. I'm not just so sure about speaking, but I love to preach, so I'll throw a little of that in. And you are. It was really, there were 2 times in my life, before I get to Africa, there were 2 times in my life that there were sort of life-changing moments for me. I came to Niagara for my junior and senior year. I had been in the seminary in 71, and I graduated in 72. And when I was here in 71 with the students, a number of students on campus start organizing for UNICEF, which helps the United Nations Children Educational Fund throughout the world. And so I got involved as a junior. And then as a senior, I sort of helped run the Niagara Falls UNICEF project, in which we went out. There were about 20, 25 students. We went out and visited every school and tried to get them to trick or treat for UNICEF. I don't even know if they do that anymore. But we also had a business campaign, and we had a fundraising event in the Student Center. I remember Father Gouldrick was one of my directors in the seminary, and getting permission to have, we had a rock band in, and the real draw, and I know that that's not possible now because when I was here you only had to be 18 to drink legally. We had 5-cent beer that night, and it went over very, very well. But it was probably that experience. It was that experience of reaching out to the poor of the world that I had here that really, I guess, kick-started, even though I was in the seminary, my understanding of what being a Vincentian was all about. It is about giving back to the others and realizing that we're brothers and sisters. In 2002, I was a pastor in Baltimore for 22 years of 2 African-American Catholic parishes, and the people in my parish would always say that their spirituality came from Africa, not necessarily their religion, but their spirituality. And I always had this great desire to go, and we're allowed to go on sabbatical, and I asked our provincial at the time, I said, can I go to Africa? And he said, no. But then he said, well, write it up. And I wrote it up, and he brought it to his council, and they thought it was a great idea. And I was blessed to be able to go to Kenya, Ethiopia, Nigeria, and Ghana. And that experience would probably, if I had to pick a second experience that changed my life so much, would be the experience in Africa. When I went there, I remember seeing poverty that I had never seen before, and I worked in the poorest parish of Baltimore in the inner city. But yet I saw a joy in the people of Africa. I remember once you got outside Addis Ababa, which is a city of about 3 million in Ethiopia, 3 to 5 million, more than half of the children would not have shoes. Sometimes you would see little kids, they would be this size, probably 4 or 5 years old, and they're there with a stick in a pasture, taking care of the cattle that were like 20 times their size. You would see families, you would see women bent over carrying firewood, and you would see little children with and I think I saw something in the student center today, one of the buckets where they carry fresh water their whole lives, and it made me realize how blessed we are. Sometimes I'd go into an Ethiopian village, and I would think to myself that these children here will never get a chance to go anywhere outside that little village. And see, we don't realize how absolutely blessed we are and the great opportunities that we have. In Africa, I visited Kenya, Ethiopia, I visited Madagascar, Mozambique, Rwanda, Burundi, Cameroon, Ghana, Nigeria, the Democratic Republic of the Congo. I'm sure you know, those of you who have geography, that there's 2 Congos. There's the Republic of the Congo and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. So I've truly been blessed in Africa. And I was thinking about Vincentians in Africa. And last week, I don't know how many of you got to meet him, but Archbishop Barano Jesus, the Archbishop of Addis Ababa, was here. Archbishop Barano Jesus is a Vincentian, was ordained the same year that I was ordained in 1976. Archbishop Barano Jesus is a great example of what it means to be Vincentian. When he was newly ordained, maybe just a couple years he was serving, the communists took over. And they confiscated much of the church land, and many of the foreign priests had to flee. Now, he was a native Ethiopian, and eventually he was thrown into prison. And then, not for a terribly long time, maybe 6 or 7 months, but I think if any of us spent 6 or 7 months in prison, that would be a terribly long time. After he got out, he was one of the people most responsible for allowing, because all those who had arrested him were then thrown into prison and given death sentences. And because of his appeal, they were, the sentences were taken off the table. And when the Archbishop was in Philadelphia, I just happened, God works in such strange, that's why I said, you might be here because you think the points, but I think God has a different reason. When he was in Philadelphia, I invited him to my parish. I said, do you want to preside at the liturgy? And if you want to preach, you can preach. And he said, yes. I have in my church family one Ethiopian man who's married to an American woman. They have a little child who I'm going to baptize in a week or two. And I hadn't announced that he's coming, and he came. And when the Ethiopian man came, he called his mother. And after the Mass, his mother wanted to talk to the Archbishop because her husband, this man's father, was one of the people who had the Archbishop arrested. And for 20-some years, he's been in an asylum in the Italian embassy. And when she told the Archbishop spoke about how he can begin the process of having him be able to return to his family in the United States. You know, Pope Francis talks about love and mercy, and there it is. The Archbishop was in the United States. This is the Vincentian part. The Archbishop was in the United States because he has a vision. When I was with him in Ethiopia this summer, I said to him, you've got to visit the United States because he wants to start the Catholic University of Ethiopia. That is an awesome thing. You understand, too, in Ethiopia, about 50% of the population is Orthodox Christians. About 33% of the population would be Muslim, and then the other 17%, most would be different Protestant denominations, and 1% would be Catholic. And so, but he sees the need. It wasn't just the Archbishop, but it was all, he's the head of the Ethiopian bishops, Catholic Bishops Society. And they said, this is what we need. We need to share. We need to share with the world and with Ethiopia Catholic values. And so the Archbishop, when I heard this, I said, you need to come and see our Vincentian universities in the United States. And so I set up a visit for him here at Niagara to De Paul. I took him up to St. John's University. And so here is a man who is making a great difference, a Vincentian. I thought also of, there's a confrere that we have from our province, a former superior general, who also, he doesn't live in Africa, but he impacts Africa. Father Bob Maloney Africa has been devastated by HIV/AIDS. And many of the daughters of charity. See, there are many branches of the Vincentian family. Niagara is a branch of the Vincentian family. If you have a Ladies of Charity group in your church, if you have the St. Vincent de Paul Society in Africa, they have these Marian youth that are part of it also. And Bob Maloney started this Project Dream, where they reach out and try to bring some sort of healing to people with HIV/AIDS, not necessarily in the sense of healing, because there's no cure, but in the sense particularly reaching out to women who were pregnant and they were HIV positive. And they've set up these infirmaries in about 7 places in Africa where people come and get the medication they need. They get the education they need. They get the food they need, not just while the mothers are pregnant, but it continues so that the mothers can be mothers. And 95% of the women who get involved in this program and follow the protocol deliver healthy, non-infected babies. That's being a Vincentian in Africa. I also thought there's a brother Jim Dunleavy from the Western Province who's in Kenya, And he went to Kenya, and he had some carpentry skill. And what he found, it was a carpentry workshop, so that in Kenya, outside Nairobi, he has a shop where he trains men so that they can use these skills to make a proper living. I need to look at I have lots of people written down here. And, I thought of, there's a young priest. He's probably about 30 years old. He hasn't been ordained 3 years, and he was just sent to Chad. Chad is not a province. We have a mission there that's the African Conference from the 10 provinces in Africa. And Chad is very, very, very poor. And he writes me many times. He calls me Dad, and he writes me and tells me about what they're doing. And his last letter, I said, tell me what you're doing in Chad. And he's only been there 2.5 years, and this last year he had like 250 converts. But they have 37 outstations. An outstation is like a place where you have church without it being the main church. But then he went on to say, he said, in those 37 places, only one has any kind of a building. So they have church outside. They teach the people about God. And the problem in Chad, like so many, you heard it this morning, is schools. And they have started 7 schools with no buildings. But they've started 7, and they work around the culture. It's not like, all right, we're going to have school from September to June. No, you have to work around the agrarian culture. And so when it's the dry season, that's when they have the school. So here is and they're dealing with sorcery, and they're dealing with lots of other negativities. But here is a true Vincentian missionary. And this summer when I was in Ethiopia, there was a young priest in Ethiopia. They don't call priests father, they call him Abba Yasu. And he works in a city called Bahir Dar. And Bahir Dar is a city, again, if you're in Ethiopia, outside Addis Ababa, it's a poor city. And when I went to Africa, one of the first things I thought is that I want to see what the Ethiopians think or the Kenyans think. It's not that way. See, when I went to, the first country I went to was Kenya, so I want to see what the Kenyans think about God. And I found out that there are like 66 different tribes in Kenya. So you're not talking about one different set of values, you're talking about 66 different set of values and traditions that people come out of. And many times tribalism it would be like racism here in the United States. And in Bahir Dar, there is a tribe that nobody wants to associate with. And so just recently, in the last 3 years, this is being a Vincentian in Africa, he started a daycare kindergarten program to begin teaching the children of this tribe that no one will associate with, so that because they have basically have been uneducated, so that many of them can qualify for the schools. And so he's bringing hope in Africa. I thought of, there's at St. John's University, there's another Ethiopian confrere named Gamechu, and he was in a city called Ambo, and in Ambo, and I forget who mentioned it this morning. Oh, Father from Ghana spoke about the deaf and the mute, and I'm not sure why, but in Africa there are many, many deaf, mute people, and if you're deaf and mute, people just, you can't communicate. But in Nigeria, in Ethiopia, and many places, it is the Vincentians and the Daughters of Charity who are having schools for the deaf and the mute. And Father Gamechu just started the school where there was a person who had previously been able to, and then he lost his ability to hear, and he runs this school for the deaf and the mute. And so that's some of the things that are going on in Africa. In Nigeria, where I also did a lot of work, almost every parish has schools, because education is the key and people understand this, that if we're going to make a difference, we got to educate the people of God. Also clinics, you go with the Daughters of Charity, they'll have, because the health care is so poor, and that's being a Vincentian in Africa. I could go through the entire list, but when I came back my first time from Africa, I remember at my first visit in Ethiopia, watching these little kids, and they have a soccer ball. Well, it's not a soccer ball. I mean, you know it is, but it's a ball of paper rolled up with some kind of tape, and that's what they're using for a soccer ball. And they're running up and down, and their clothes are so worn that they're shreds. And when I came back from Africa that first time, I said, I have to do something. And so I start writing all my family and friends and the parishioners, asking them to help. And I've done that actually. Then the Vincentian Solidarity Office has jumped in and said they would match whatever I do. And the nice thing about it, we talk about accountability this morning, was one of the things, is going through them. As the provinces ask for money, they have to turn in their receipts. And so there's so many wonderful, wonderful good things being done by Vincentians in Africa. I would encourage you. I think that you can do things. You can do things in Haiti. You could do things in Africa. You just have to reach out. You have to be open. I mean, nowadays, when I went to Africa in 2002, it was the first time, because my parishioners wanted me to communicate, that I ever used email. And, the internet has made the world so small. And so we can all be involved. And don't necessarily wait until you're an old man like me. You can do it now. You can get involved. There are programs where you can visit the poor around here. There's programs where you can go even outside the country. Then you'll get to see. One of the things about poverty, I'm sure that you experience in Haiti too, is that in America, when you see poverty, a lot of you just see depressed. People with like no hope. In Africa, you can see people who have nothing, but they have joy. They have hope, even though you almost shake your head and say, how can they be so happy? And it's basically because of their faith. It's basically because of their family values. And any place I went, I saw that. There's a brother in Rwanda, a religious brother in Kabgayi. It's a city, and many times the families have children. He's a Vincentian brother, and they can't afford them. And so they send him out of the house, and he has organized these sort of like homeless boys, and has began minister. They have a place where they can come and wash their clothes and be fed, and they have seminarians mentoring them, and they found places with other people so that it doesn't cost them anything, where they can have a place to lay their head at night. It happens everywhere. Where my conviction is, and I would hope this is true of you in the future, that wherever you see a Vincentian, you see hope for the poor. I know in Africa I see it all the time, and so rather than continue to go over example after example, if you have any questions, if you want to know how to get involved, I'll be available afterwards. Thank you. I probably missed the most important example. If I could just think, Madagascar. I've been to Madagascar 3 times. There is probably the most famous Vincentian in the world, Padre Opeka. He used to teach in the seminary. I think he is from Slovenia or something. And in Madagascar, there was so much poverty. People were living on a trash heap. They were living there, and they would go through the trash and see what they could salvage, either for themselves or to eat. And when he saw that, I can't teach in the seminary anymore, because if I'm called to serve the poor, I got to be with them. And he began to teach the people and said, we need to find jobs. And so around faith, he gathered people together, and they start doing quarry work. They start all by hand. I mean, we would not, I was there, you go down into this deep hole, and I'm carrying nothing. And you see these women, sometimes with their children tied to them, and they're climbing up the mountain with like 2 huge rocks on their head. And then you see other women sitting there, or men sitting there, breaking the rocks in half. And what happened is, through their work and their commitment to work and their faith, they were able to build. The government gave him a whole lot of land, and they start building houses. I think they have about 5,000 houses. If they were here in the United States, we would consider them middle class to upper middle class houses. Now, you got to understand, they're in Madagascar, so if we saw them, that we would certainly not consider them. In fact, that area has become, they set up clinics, they have schools, but the people must work and they must go to church. And I remember seeing a little girl. I mean, there are many times you have orphans, and so he's also set up like parents who care for them, not necessarily their parents. There's one little girl that one time I visited, she had part of her ear bitten off because a rat had eaten her. And you know, he saw this need, and he has the people. I went to a mass there. Other than when the Pope has come to the United States, there must have been 7,000 or 8,000 people who were at the mass. And now it's all the wealthy people who want to buy the land around this section that they have, because it's so beautiful. The roads are like cobblestone, which in Madagascar would be wonderful. And so he's just done tremendous work. And so, again, my thing is if you see a Vincentian in Africa, of any part of the Vincentian family, you're going to see hope for the poor. Amen? Thank you.